your mind. Or is it off now?
It's off.
Yeah. So the reason why it's important to change your mind is because you are not attaching your value to the ideas that you hold. You're not attaching your value to the ideas you hold. You are valuable irregardless of some of the ideas that you hold. So when you attach your value to the ideas that you hold, it's very difficult to change the ideas, because you think, when I change my ideas, that means I've changed, my value also has changed in a way. So if someone tells you you're wrong, you think you're useless. But when someone says you're wrong, the good thing is you should be interested. Oh, why do you say you're wrong? Because I want to be right. Being right is more important than, the truth is more important than anything else. I care about the truth.
Yeah.
You're a better person because you move from wrong to right. But that's sort of just the tips on how, the sort of individuals and can basically start moving on there. Like, basic things, get a mentor, get someone to basically guide you through, really through the whole process. Understand yourself, know who you are, and move towards that. So there is a job for the workforce, but the job is easy, but be positive. Because the world is getting better. Be inspired, because things are getting better. There is like this doom and gloom messaging that you basically get, like everything is getting worse. But everything is not getting worse. That's technically not true. We're getting wealthier. We're getting happier. We're not happy. Happier is a bit debatable. But if you look at happiness as a function of having all the basic needs that you need, things are actually getting better. The interest rate might do its own thing right now, which everyone can complain about and live in the news. But the reality is things are getting better. We're getting healthier. We're getting wealthier. We're getting more access to information. We are living in the best time in human history. There is no better time than right now. And the idea is, how do we take the opportunities that have been awarded to us by those that went before us and utilize that to create a better future and a better world? And that is our responsibility.
Thank you so much for that. Maybe in closing is, I wanted to sort of touch about your work, but I think maybe we'll do it for the next podcast. But in closing, please do give the workforce. I'm trying to think of the question now.
Yeah.
And I just want to be a very good closing remarks by you. Or maybe let's just put it like that. Any closing remarks for the workforce?
So, in closing, I really think I'll sort of repeat what I said, but also expand on it a little bit.
Okay.
Around sort of the big question is, it's not really, are you going to be wealthy? You're probably going to be wealthy. Are you going to be healthy? You're most likely going to be healthy. Are things going to get better in your life? It's most likely will get better. The bigger question there becomes, are you really going to be fulfilled with that process? You're going to have all of that. Let's say, all things being constant, you're going to have all of that. You do all the right things, you work hard, you do what you have to do, and all of that. Are you going to get the actual fulfillment during that process? And that is a bigger question. Like, what does this actually all mean? What's the meaning of this, right? And happiness then becomes quite a crucial part but not happiness as in like elation, where you're like, oh, cool, you feel blood rush through your body. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just really talking about just the fulfillment that you get day to day. Are you actually going to live a full life? And living a full life, to me, at this point, it's really about how do you live an observed life. So living an observed life becomes how do you live fully in each moment? Because life is made up of moments. But how do you live each moment fully?
Sure.
How do you become really present in each moment as it passes? And the challenge with what's happening on the internet at the moment is that generally people are having, like I said, on TikTok, you basically have all of these short segments, just like 2-minute segments that jumps from one context to the next, one context to the next, one context to the next, and you laugh about it. And some of the times when you're around people, you're probably on your phone, or there's no sitting at dinner anymore without the TV. Like, okay, let's switch off the TV. Let's put our phones on the side. Let's sit on a dinner table. Let's just have a conversation. Or let's walk at the beach and just without phones and all of that, let's sit by the beach and have an actual conversation. The idea of like living each moment meaningfully, an observed life, that is what's going to be really a great indicator of a productive,
Well-lived life, yeah.
a well-lived life, in a way. So it's really, and I've been thinking about it very consistently. You know, how do I live in each moment fully? This will make you even more productive, because when you're not all over the place, when you're in the moment, you're just call it deep work, right? Deep work. When you're in the moment and zoning in, you're definitely a bit more productive. But with the split attention span which the internet brings, when you move on from one thing to the next thing, when you're scrolling, you're moving from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. It sort of shortens your attention span. You easily get bored. You cannot be by yourself and not feel like, you cannot be comfortable with your own thoughts. Some people are afraid to be by themselves and comfortable with their own thoughts. Their thoughts are basically running all over the place. Why? Because you've taken that habit of switching context all the time. You don't settle down and sit down with your thoughts. And meditation is a big part of that. Reading is a big part of that, because at least you're focusing on one thing or story and all of that, and you're sort of blocking out. Not really blocking out, but you're basically following the patterns of whatever you're working on or whatever you're doing. So I think the big question there is, how do you live an observed life? Then the final thing is, how do you build trust? Right? It is the story of the guy who goes to a funeral, and the pastor is there, and the pastor says, okay, is there anyone that has something to say about this fella? And no one says anything. Is there anyone? I mean, come on, guys, can someone say something about this guy? And one guy in the back said, okay, cool, just say something. It's like, his brother was worse. Right?
Sure.
So there you see a man who was probably successful. There you see a man who probably lived a great life. But then he left an ultimately incorrect example, because he probably broke trust with the people that he or she cared for the most.
100%.
So the idea is, how do you make sure that you keep the trust and maintain the relationships, and because these things will basically matter in the long run. And given a long life, what's going to matter is what sort of trust credit have you built along your journey.
100%.
So that's what I can say to the workers on this one. But I'm really passionate at this time around, things like how do we approach what's happening with AI and what's happening with technology to help us, but also still live deeply meaningful lives. Yeah.
I think that's the best way to sort of end it, and it sort of gives us something to talk about in the next time we chat.
Yeah.
I think what you did, the topics that you were sort of covering were things which is why I like you, because you always try to see things in the bigger picture and help us understand that it's not just working. Will you be fulfilled? And it's not just that, there's also living a well-observed life. And I think as the workforce, as much as we want to grow in our companies, you talked about values and how much value you're putting in. We sort of have to see everything at a bigger picture. And I wish most people that this conversation would have like the highest views, because at least we were talking about things which will sort of give you a better compass for anyone who's going to be watching, and encourage the workforce out there that it's not just about making money. Let's try to get fulfilled whilst doing that. And of course, it's an incentive game, I guess.
Yeah. it is always an incentive game. I think really understanding incentives is probably one of the most important things that a person can do, because all of human behavior is influenced by incentives.
Yeah.
So understanding what incentives are motivating my behavior, what incentives are motivating the other person's behavior is extremely critical, because all of human behavior is centered around incentive mechanism. That's the way we fix governments. That's the way we fix businesses. It's really making sure that we align those incentives and we revise incentive mechanisms that we have put in place. How do you fight corruption? You make sure that you don't set up systems that make it easy to cheat. You make sure that you don't make systems that make it easy to cheat. You can walk around in a very dangerous area with your wallet out. You are encouraging someone to come and take it. And you are equally responsible in motivating that behavior, because you encourage that in a way. So there has to be like sort of like thinking, really deep thinking around what incentives are causing this behavior and how do we revise the incentives? How do we make sure that the incentives are aligned with the goals that we want? And so we can create positive incentives too, and we can create negative incentives for doing specific things in a way. That will basically help. But it's really important to really think a little bit more about how sort of incentives affect our behavior and the behavior of businesses and governments at large as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mays. And once more, we thank you so much for that initial gist of inspiration to start the podcast, and to more 3 years to come. Definitely. Next 10 years doing this.
And always remember that love is the answer.
Love is the answer, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Great stuff.
On that note, thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. Let's go become better people, and let's just remember that it's an incentive game, and live a well-observed life. And I think I got a lot of takeaways for myself. But I think the workforce will also benefit from this. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, brother.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Boom. It's been a long time, eh?
Yeah, it's been a long time.